Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rise Up with Dr. Ty podcast. Tonight, our topic is a very special one, and it's very close to my heart. It's all about healing your inner child. But first, I want to introduce you all to the panel, and then I have a little bit of disclaimer. Tonight, I have with me Bashira, my Aunt Connie, my cousin Candace, and my best friend Ty. And here we go with a disclaimer. The content provided on this channel is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The information presented here is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified mental health professional. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health issues, it is crucial to seek the guidance of a licensed mental health professional or a qualified medical practitioner. The content on this channel is not designed to provide individualized mental health advice, and its purpose is not to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any mental health conditions. Do not disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of content found on this channel. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or if you are in immediate danger, please call the emergency services or the 988 number. By accessing and using the content on this channel, you acknowledge and understand the limitations of the information provided. The creators of this channel shall not be held responsible for any actions taken based on the content presented. Remember, your mental health is important, and seeking appropriate professional help is a crucial step in your mental health well-being. Thank you.
So, our inner child represents our younger self and has like parts of herself, since we're all women here, such as innocence, vulnerability, creativity, spontaneity. Our inner child is shaped in our formative years. So this usually comes from interactions with our parents, our caregivers, and other role models, such teachers and such. And positive experiences during our childhood can result in a healthy and nurturing inner child, while negative experiences can lead to trauma, to a wounded or a neglected inner child. And specifically tonight, I wanted to talk about the wounded inner child. That wounded inner child carries a lot of unresolved emotional pain, unmet needs, and limiting beliefs that carry into us our adulthood. And these unresolved issues can manifest in a ton of ways, such as low self-esteem, fear of abandonment, difficulty forming healthy relationships, self-sabotaging behaviors, and tons of emotional reactivity. When we have a healthy inner child who was nurtured, we tend to form into adults who are able to love, are able to form healthy relationships with others. There's a concept out there called inner child work. That's when you use therapeutic techniques to help heal. First, you have to first helps you access and then heal, communicate with that inner child. You provide that inner child comfort, reassurance, and work towards resolving past wounds and traumas. It's a difficult topic to discuss. It's difficult, especially for women of color, to have this discussion because there are so many areas that we weren't allowed to speak. I don't know if anyone else in the community was told children are meant to be seen and not heard, and we don't want to see you that often. That inner child isn't nurtured. That inner child isn't given that opportunity to grow up into a healthy adult. And a lot of times when we have dysfunctional relationships in our adult life, those can be traced back to our relationship with our inner child and how she wasn't healed. So I'm going to open it up now to the panel before I go into some skills and some techniques. But I just wanted to open it up to the panel and see if anyone has anything that they would like to add to the discussion.
Dr. Ty.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Bashira. I realized that in order to grow, that I have to go back and heal the little girl inside of me. But pain, anger, resentment, it won't allow me to.
Pain, anger, resentment towards little Bashira or towards the people who hurt you?
Unfortunately, I would say most of all of those three things is directed towards my mom. And I do feel like I don't disrespect her, but I hate that this is the topic in the first one now because it's just where I am in my life. I actually had this conversation. My father was murdered when I was not maybe 11 months old. And my mom never really had a conversation with my brother and I about that and how it happened. And maybe about 3 to 5 years ago, I just happened to Google my dad's name, and the case study came up on my father's murder trial. And it was very graphic. And in saying that, I didn't even know where my father was buried, even though I would drive past the cemetery where he was at. I drive past it every day. My mom never told us where he was buried. She just was like, she told us some story that as I got older as a woman, it didn't make sense to me. And I don't know why I just can't go to her and ask her because it's some stuff about her that it's not, she's not truthful to me in other areas of my life. And I just was thinking about it a lot here lately because one of my father's sister actually asked me maybe last Saturday, did my mom ever tell me the story on how my father was murdered? And my aunt was drunk at the time, I should say. And I removed myself from the conversation. And I was with my brother, and I had said to my aunt, which one of us looks more like my father? Because me and my brother we're 9 months apart. But people often say we look like twins. We look like twins. So I just happened to ask my aunt, who looks more like my father? And my aunt said, I look more like my father. And then my brother said, and that is why mommy acts the way she acts towards you, because I remind her of my father more than my brother, who's a man. So that was crazy to me. So I don't know. Because I confront things in my life head on. This is the one thing that I'm detached from my mom with. I don't even want to. I don't. As soon as she opens her mouth with stuff, I don't. I'm just like lie, and
It is challenging when our parents aren't open and honest in our relations, in our interactions. I, who never really knew my father, I always say sperm donor, biological. I don't know what to call him. And the reason I don't know what to call him is because it wasn't until maybe 4 years ago. No, it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, because my mother passed away 4 years ago. So 5 years ago, I was visiting my great aunt, who is my grandmother's older sister, with my mother, and my great aunt was sharing some stories. She finally got the story on the chicken grease. One day, I'm going to tell the story of the chicken grease, but I really think I need to go to her house and record her telling the story of the chicken grease, and then I'll play it. But I was there to listen and to learn. And that was when I found out that my biological father was a full grown man. And my mother was 14 when she got pregnant with me. So I didn't know that as a child. And then I remember what, like, the horrified look. And my aunt looked, and my mother didn't think anything was wrong with it. And she's just looking at me like, 'cause I was absolutely horrified. And I'm like, Mommy, you never told me that you were molested. And she was like, I wasn't, he didn't molest me. I'm like, Mom, he molested you. He abused you. And then my great aunt chimes in with, older men just were with younger women back then and had an older man. And I was like, no, she was a child. He was an adult. He sexually assaulted her. She was a victim of rape. So I was the only person there who was horrified by that.
We are totally different with our kids. And I can honestly say I'm totally different with my stepdaughter than I was with my kids. But I can see the difference is because the time has changed. But there's things that has happened. And like when Ty said, our aunt, my aunt, who told her, oh, that's what older men, yeah, that's how they lived. Older men did that to women. And it was not looked upon as rape or molestation. I don't know why, because that just turned it completely different for me. And why she's able to talk, because I remember asking my mom in the nursing home, why you never told me about menopause? I'm sweating my ass off, getting my hair done, for my hair to look like I just got out the pool the next day. And a customer at work was telling me what to do. And I remember going into the nursing home and asking my mom, why you never told me anything about menopause? And my aunt, her sister, looked at me and says, because that's not something that we discuss. We don't talk about those kind of things. We never. I said, why? You had all those girls, Aunt Clara. You never told them about those kind of things? I didn't grow up with my mom. I moved in with my mom when I was 16. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 5 or 6, and I didn't move in with my mom until I was 16. But I would have thought that she would have told me something about it. It was never discussed. Things were never discussed. I always heard her say, and that's how we did it. That's how we did things. Not, I did this because of that, or you don't do this because of that. Now I'm telling my daughter about menopause, what to expect, what not to expect, what's going to happen. I don't get it. I don't understand why there's things that they never discuss, never talk about, and then when you do hear it, like the story of the chicken grease, it's not. I would have used that as a learning tool. They use that as, and they laugh about it, but it's not funny. Maybe that's the way they got over it, the trauma that they went through. And back in the day, it was a man beat a woman's ass, but it was just something that those things that they did, they considered that they kept them behind closed doors, and everything. It's always what's done in the house, stay in the house kind of thing, which no longer works but that's how it was.
I try often to just be like, okay, it's water under the bridge.
But no, it's not water. If you don't get this out, I can guarantee you, you're going to be thinking about it forever. There's things that my mom did that I thought, what was wrong with me? My parents was not the, oh, I love you type of, it was on their deathbed. Versus how I tell my family that I love them.
Yeah.
It was, they didn't express love like that.
That's incredibly different. It wasn't, and this is going to sound weird, but especially since the woman that I'm talking about, she and I are only 2 years apart. It wasn't until I saw my uncle's wife interact with her children. And then that's when I started to realize, wait a second. And I was a full adult and full grown up who was living on her own and married. I didn't know that was how other people was. I just thought, honestly, this is going to sound crazy, y'all, but I thought that was just how white people treated their kids. I didn't know that Black people treated their kids the way that my aunt and uncle treated their children. And again, like my uncle and I and his wife, we're only 2 years apart. Like he and I call each other brother niece and sister uncle. But when I looked at that relationship, and she's the one who convinced me, because when I was young, I was 24, 25 when I moved back from California, I said, I am never talking to my mom again. And he's the one who convinced me to get out there and build a relationship. And it took a while, but I don't regret building the relationship. And I definitely don't regret taking, in as much, I was angry for a long time at my mom because I didn't realize when I was young how young she was. When I look at my life now, I will be 50 next year. My mother was 35 years old. I was 35 years old when my mother was 50. So it's like she was growing up with me. And it was, I had to get permission from my grandfather. She had to get permission from my grandfather. It was like she wasn't the adult in the relationship. And I don't think that she ever worked on healing her inner child. No. I tried to have conversations with her later on, but she didn't want to have those conversations. And I think it was my reaction. It stunned me, the age difference between my mom and my biological father. It stunned me so much too.
Because that's what people do. That he was a grown man. I don't think she ever realized that she was raped, Kai.
No, I definitely don't think, even like as an adult, like after this conversation, maybe after my visceral reaction to it, but Aunt Clara, she was not deterred. She told me so many stories of growing up in Port Norris and some of the stories from Maryland and the way they say Maryland. She basically, I think that I was the only one there at the time who was so like, ugh. But I also think maybe if I had taken a minute and I had worked on my inner child healing, because I hadn't started working on myself until, honestly, I didn't start working on myself until, as far as like my inner child healing, until my mother passed away. Prior to that, I had gone to therapy. I had done this. I worked on my husband passing away. I worked on that, but I had never really worked on
your inner child.
My inner child. What did she need? And my mother passing away allowed me to sit down and start asking myself these questions that even if she were still here today, I don't think she could have answered them, because she was a kid when I was born. I think about what I was doing when I was 15 years old. 14, she got pregnant with me. 15, and then there is the story, the infamous story of us going out to dinner. And it was lunch, and it was us, and I was taking my mom and her twin brother. My mother has a twin. Her twin brother out to dinner for their birthday every year. And my uncle decided to tell the story of the family finding out that my mom had a baby. And we had to end the day because my mom got up and went to the bathroom and was gone for a long time. And so I was like, let me go find her. I go back there to go get her. And she was like, oh no, I was just taking my time. This is after she was diagnosed with cancer. I don't know if she ever wanted those stories to come out, which I didn't know. That my grandfather's girlfriend took her to the hospital, and she had me. There was no prenatal care. My mother never got care.
Because we never knew. Honest to God, we didn't know.
She said she came, my Uncle Earl was like, he was happy when my uncle's, okay, I love him to pieces, but he basically was saying and made a joke out of it, that he was so happy when my mom came, they found out that my mom had a baby, because that meant that my grandfather couldn't treat him badly, that my mom was no longer the golden child anymore. Because look what she did. She came home with a baby. And I don't think my mom understood how to talk to me growing up. When I was growing up, I'm in high school, and everything was, you're going to come home pregnant. You're going to come home pregnant. That was like the worst thing that could ever happen to you. I started dating my husband. Oh, you're going to just come home pregnant. Okay. When I got married, you're just going to come home pregnant. Dude, I'm married. If I get pregnant, that's okay. Okay. So I went back to school. I got another degree, and then I got another degree. And she stopped saying that once the degrees started rolling in about me coming home pregnant. And then she started to wonder what was wrong with me, but that's neither here nor there. I wonder if our parents, if they could sit down and speak to someone and work on their inner child and do that work, would they be able to do things differently? Or are they a victim of the times that they were raised in? Because therapy for Black people is such a new thing. I remember my
I was
mother.
just about to say,
All you need is
excuse me,
Jesus.
that
My mother used to say that to
we
me all the
never
time.
had therapy. It was a belt. There's nothing wrong with you. You're going to get this together. And so it was never, you talked about therapy, you never do this. There's so many grown men in prison, young men that needed therapy, but didn't know how to get it because their parents never thought, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need your ass whooped and you will get it right and you will stop doing this and you will stop doing that. Would that have helped? I think it would have helped. It took me 56 years to see things differently, some things differently. It took me that long of a time to forgive my mom for the way that she treated me versus how she treated my brother and sister. It took me a long time. And I wish I could have had that conversation when she was alive and was able to talk, but I never did. But would they have went to therapy? No, mommy and daddy would have never went to therapy. And that's what you're taught. You don't need a doctor. You don't need this. Black folks don't go to therapy.
Black folks go to church.
Yes. Which stuff happens 10 times worse than church. I'm not knocking church. I love church. But you got people that goes to church and they're being molested and sexually abused at the church. Not just at the Catholic church, but at the Black church, at the Jewish church, at the Chinese church, at all the churches.
There have been, the statistic is escaping me, but like 2,500 like convictions this year so far of child, and quite a few of them happened in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I didn't know before that time how to ask the questions.
Okay.
But I'm just like hearing these different like aspects of growing up. Yes, you're correct. There are so many people today who were sexually abused in church. It's something that you think about because going to church, it's the sanctuary. You should feel safe there. And then I'm not even going to get into, because this is a conversation that is probably too big for tonight, but I feel like the conversation of uncles, cousins who are sexually abusing children.
Mm-hmm.
And family knows, and then they just swipe it under the rug. Like Chris Rock had a joke and was like, don't let him go over to uncle's house. He be raping the kids. Why are we allowing our children to be around these people?
Correct.
I will say this, I'm not a mother, but I did invite 3 moms with me on a panel, and we have some moms with different age children here. And like, how are you different today with your children versus how your parents were with you?
I will say that this has been very eye-opening experience for me because I've learned some things now that I have not heard. But I will say for me, my biggest thing that I do with my son is I always tell him I love him. And I was never really told that I was loved unless it was something drastic. So now after hearing from my Aunt Connie and from Utah, and it's just like now everything makes sense. So it's okay. They didn't express love unless it was something serious. So for me, it's important for me to tell my son that I love him all the time. And it doesn't even have to be anything serious. It can just be like, hey, I love you.
I love you.
He comes up to me and he freely gives me a hug. I didn't get that when I was growing up. I didn't like, and that's my inner child. My inner child is I need to feel loved. And I get that more with my son now. And I try to teach him to be that way. And he does. He just willingly just comes up, gives me a hug out of nowhere. Mommy, I love you.
and that makes me feel good.
I'm just going to interject for a second because her son is the little boy I babysit. And on her birthday morning, dark 30, he texts me and says, "Hi, it's mommy. It's my mommy's birthday." I know.
Dark 30. I like that.
It was an ungodly time in the morning for me to be getting a text message from a 10-year-old. He was 9 at the time, but he was just letting me know it's my mommy's birthday. I don't have children, but I am different towards my nieces and nephews, and they all know that I'm a safe space for them, and they can have a conversation with me about anything, and I'm not going to judge them, and I'm not going to be the person who is like yelling and screaming and acting because a conversation was had. That's how.
And that's another thing, Ty, with my son. I try to, when it comes to disciplining him, I don't like to just discipline him and not tell him why I did what I did. I feel like when I was disciplined, I was never told, like...
We were never told, Candace.
No, it was never told or explained. It's just, okay, you're getting disciplined, and it's like you had to just know what it was. You know what I mean? So I tried to be more where I explain things to my son. And this is why I'm doing this, and I don't want you to do this. And I always try to explain to him that there is a consequence for everything that you do, good or bad. There's always a consequence for it. So I'm like, do you want a good one or a bad one? And I try to explain it to him because it wasn't explained to me. So I tried to be a better parent to him than my parents were to me.
Exactly.
So let me ask this question. So when you are having these interactions with your children, and I know that Bashira and Auntie, you both have adult children, like the interactions that you have with your children today, how are they different than the interactions that your parents had with you as an adult?
I'm present in my children's life, and sometimes more than I would like to be. Yeah, like me, I always tell my children that they weren't accidents. You weren't an accident. I made a conscious decision to have you. So it is what it is. Like, I'm showing up. I cannot go a day without hearing from one of my daughters, both of my daughters. I tell them, if I don't tell them on the phone or get them on the phone, I will write it on their Facebook, Instagram page. And Naya, Maliha, did I tell you I love you today? And they hate it. But at the same time, now that they're adults, they tell me, like, their friends be like, we loved coming over your house because your mom said I loved you all the time. Their friends know that. I see their friends on the street and I be like, I love y'all. And I mean it. Because my mom didn't tell me. I can't remember my mom saying I love you until maybe I was 45.
I was going to say, I remember when my mom, when she was diagnosed with cancer. That's about when it started. When she started to express her feelings towards me.
Wow. And I was like, for me, I feel like I never was told, I'm proud of you. I rarely ever hear that. And I say that to my son when he's doing something, like, I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. Because I feel like, you know, we need to hear those words of affirmation. We need to hear that. And I didn't hear that growing up either. My mom would say it, but my dad wouldn't say it. And to me, I felt like I was missing something because my dad didn't tell me that. And to me, it was like, my mom always tells me that. I hear that all the time, but I was always missing that from my dad. And it was like, dang, is he proud of me? Because there's things that my
child needed.
Yeah, and also there's like things that my dad has said to me that just made me like appalled. Like, even like at the time that I had my son, I wasn't married or anything like that, but I was 26 going on 27 when I had my son. And I was told, oh, it's not like having a dog, or it's not like taking care of a pet. And I'm like, dang, that's what you're going to tell me? Wow. But my mom was more proud and was like, okay, like, you're old enough to take care of a kid. But my dad just did not seem happy for me at all. And I guess maybe I didn't live up to his expectation. But at the same time, it was just like, wow, like, that's what you think of me? So it was like, from that point on, it was like, you know what? I got to do what I got to do at the end of the day, just to prove to him that I can do this, regardless of what you think about me.
You don't have to prove any, and I say this to my clients all the time, I don't have a heaven or hell to put you in. So you don't have to prove anything to anyone. The only person that you have to prove to is yourself.
To yourself.
But that's how I felt at that time.
Yeah,
That's
of
how I
course,
felt.
absolutely.
And it took me a while to actually get over and forgive those things that was said to me or done to me and stuff like that. I had to actually reflect and try to understand from what may have transpired in his life. So it's something I'm still continuing to work on.
A lot of our parents, I know my mom, she always says to me, like, I was the one child that didn't need her. And I'm like, that's where you're wrong. If you have children, I don't care if you have 10, 20, you have to find the lane that you need to fit into their lives because you're the parent. You know what I'm saying? So I used to think that I had to parent my children exactly the same. But my daughter came to me and she was like, Mom, I'm Maliha and that's Naya. Naya has different needs than me. But to this day, I'm the only one that has been in the same career, had my children within a marriage, did all the right stuff. And I was that one that they was, you, Dr. Ty, oh, she gonna be pregnant. She's the hot one. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. It's every label they put on me, I tried to make sure that I didn't wear that label. But that too is where my resentment comes in from because I feel like I had to overachieve.
I know that you all know this, and I say it all the time. The majority of the people who I talk to who are Black and brown have a degree. Most I have an Aunt Connie's daughter. She and I were talking, and I'm like, I'm getting a little bored. I think in the spring I'm going to go back and get an MBA. What is wrong with us? Am I healing that child still? Because I just finished another Postmasters. What is wrong with us?
Nothing. Nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with furthering your education. But I want to get back on what we were discussing earlier about not being told these things. Candace, I can honestly tell you, because I'm going to have conversations with your father. He loves you, but he, like I said, it was never expressed to us, not until the deathbeds.
Yeah, that's what opened my eyes and made me realize that.
I have talked to him plenty of times, and he's proud of you. I don't know what these other, because we never discussed a lot of the conversations that you and him had. And then I'm also looking at, because he was closer to, I was a daddy's girl. But some of the things that I'm thinking of now, of how he felt about you having a child, was probably told to him by daddy, because I know when I remember when Cheryl went to the hospital and we were told that she had a baby, but none of us knew she was pregnant. And I remember the disappointment my dad had. But then I remember how happy he was when Ty came home. I remember that. And when you put your child way up high and they don't reach those standards, and I remember Earl telling me that same story he told Ty about she wasn't the golden child no more. Get that? I didn't know at the time, but I get it now. Because some of the stuff Earl talked about, I don't recall it. I can't say I seen it. I can't say I witnessed it. But I knew we were brought up different. I knew we was brought up with a strap that hung in the kitchen out of fear. That was supposed to put the fear of God in you.
Mm.
Some of the things, some of the ways that we was brought up. I can also tell you that we raised ourselves.
Absolutely.
We really raised ourselves, to be honest. Because my dad worked 4 to 12. Your dad, we only think we had to have the number by when he went on break and called us at 8:05. You better had not missed that damn number. He wanted to know what the number was every day. And your chores had to be done before he got home from work. He got off of work at 12. He was home by 12:20. There was never no earlier, no later. 12:20 is when he got home. And those chores better be done. We basically raised ourselves from Earl and Cheryl watching us when I was a little girl, and Ty, I was 10 when you was born.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what happened. My father wasn't around. He was at work.
I remember
you wouldn't leave Josiah home at
Not
the
at
age
10.
of 10 now to go to work
Nope.
for 8 hours.
Oh,
No.
Nope.
That's how we were raised.
oh wow.
I was 10 at home.
Yeah, that's how we were raised. That's how we was raised. No, you don't do those things.
It was I see it a lot, like when I hear from other Gen X people on Facebook or whatever, like the Gen X jokes of, and I don't know if you went through this as well, Bashira, but going outside in the morning and not coming home until streetlights came on in the summertime, because we had food down at Miss Tillman's house, and you can get breakfast and lunch there for free, because it looks like a neighborhood program, so you can go get breakfast and lunch there for free, and you better not come home all day. Like we were gone all day long. It was just, I don't understand how I lived. I can't imagine like looking at my little cousins, like Josiah would lose his mind. Sarai would be lost in the sauce if it was all right, bye, see you later. We're gonna go and.
I was parented.
Okay.
Like because my brother thought he was a neighborhood drug dealer. My sister, I'm talking about when we were like 13, 14, like that. My sister got pregnant in the summer between the 8th grade and the 9th grade. So my parents, I felt like they just, because I was doing so well in school, and I was the type, I only needed to get a beating one time. I wasn't getting another beating. So if my mom said be in the house, girl. Yeah, if she said 9 o'clock, I was in the house. But I would, from the moment I opened my eyes, I was outside. And I wouldn't come back until my mom said, you have to be in the house at 9 o'clock, or it was 8:30 or whatever it was. I was in the house. If something was missing in the house, my parents never came to me and was like, Stephanie, because they knew I didn't steal, I didn't lie. And so I felt like they just forgot about me because I wasn't a problem. I didn't even have to show my parents my report card. They was like, oh, we know you got straight A's and B's. And I think that was their mistake. I needed guidance. I was looking for guidance, but my parents positively, I feel like they did not parent me. They just was like, okay, that's Stephanie. She's over there.
So did your parents, because this is interesting, because I really don't think that any of us at our house were parented. Like when my sister's younger than me, and my sister got pregnant young, but when my sister had her baby, it was like a scandal. But she wasn't the only one. It was at that time, all of the girls who were like my age group, like the girls that I was like hanging out with, were like, oh, this one's pregnant, this one's pregnant, this one's pregnant. Jeff said, well, no matter what, you're next.
Really?
Oh yeah, like it wasn't. If you think about, who I was hanging around with,
yes, that would make it.
Junior high school, especially.
I know.
I was the nerdy kid who hung out with her neighborhood influences. So in high school, I started hanging around different people. I just was like, I was also the one who, in college especially, I was not afraid to go buy condoms. Like all my friends would send me down to the nurse's office. And one day I showed up there with a $5 bill and condoms were 10 cents each. And I needed 50 condoms. They weren't 50 condoms for me, but the way that nurse looked at me, I'm like, what? Like all of my friends were afraid. And the next time they're just like, all right. I'm like, I am not going down there with a 10 because the way this woman is looking at me, y'all. But I was the only one who wasn't afraid to say, I'm going to protection. There's nothing wrong with protecting yourself. But you, Bashira, I was like, no, I am trying to break this negative stereotype, because back then, and my Uncle Earl will still say today that he would, when I said I was leaving and I was never coming back home, and he said to me all the time, "You're full of shit, Ty. You're full of shit." And today he'll say, "Yeah, I remember when I used to say that to you," because I knew I didn't want to come home. I knew that coming home meant that coming home and they had something to say about it. And I was not giving them that pleasure.
And I was exactly the same way too. Once I left to go to college, I never
Mm-hmm.
came back home. I was like, I'm out. But once I had my first job too, like my parents I think my mom might have bought my school clothes or something like that. But outside of like money and stuff, nope. My mom dropped me off at college, never visited me at college, nothing. Never even did my second semester food card, nothing.
So my next question is, even though you were, I'm not going to say okay, because like you weren't parented, how did that leave your relationship with yourself as an adult?
I think like from about 7th grade to until I saw a Black woman in authority, I was just very angry and bitter. I think I was the stereotypical angry Black woman. Little girl growing up. I would fight an alley cat. It wouldn't matter. Don't look at me. I never gave women a chance to be in my face and be talking. I always was the one that swung first. No, I just didn't take shit. I didn't. I try to remember all that. And then the benefit that we have as Black women that are in our position now is that, yes, we do take advantage. We do take advantage of self-care and our mental health. But there's just this, it's just this thing with my mom.
So we're talking about how our parent, like our mothers specifically, and how that impacted us and healing our inner child. Ty, did you want to join in? And did you have anything to say about how your childhood influenced who you're healing for your inner child?
Okay.
The conversation, we're talking about our inner child and how our relationship with our parents have influenced our inner child, specifically how our mother's interactions with us were during our childhood and how that impacted our loving our inner child, us growing our inner child, and then how we are today.
Quite honestly, as soon as you brought that up, so I would say your question is, what did we learn, right? But from my standpoint, it's what did I have to unlearn?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So what I had to unlearn is that what we say I would communicate to her, like I started to communicate to her like things that she would say that would like hurt my feelings or whatever. And her response, I would write her a letter, y'all. I'll write her letters and she would be like, yeah, so I read your letter and no. And she would also say things like, I said it and I'm not sorry. If I told her that what she said hurt my feelings, I said it and I'm not sorry. And when I speak towards unlearning, I would never do that to anyone because their feelings matter. And it doesn't matter what place that I may have been coming from. When I make a statement or if I say something, I definitely wouldn't intend to hurt someone. You know what I mean? Unless they do something to make me want to get back at them. But if, and I don't have any kids, but if my child came to me and said, Mom, that hurt my feelings when you said that, I wouldn't be like, I said it and I'm not sorry. And that's been said to me, that was said to me multiple times. So that's something I would have to unlearn is having emotional intelligence, being self-aware, and understanding that the words that I say can deeply impact the other person I'm trying to communicate with that I truly love. Never mind, I don't want to go too far, but
well, you can go far. How far did you want to take it?
She's still the same today.
Yeah.
She's still the same, and I love her to life. But at the same time, I just have to take a deep breath sometimes because I can't.
Do you feel like her childhood impacted how she interacts with you? Like her upbringing impacted how she raised you and your sister?
Now, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I love her and I still love her unconditionally. I understand that the way that I was brought up was from childhood pain that she had that she never resolved. Yeah. So I give her grace. I give her grace. And, in the back of my mind, I factor that in to how she is now. And see, for me, I'm willing to unlearn to become a better person. Not saying that she's not a good person, she is. But she comes from a totally different era of where I'm from.
We were discussing that earlier, that our parents and grandparents came from an era where they couldn't express the trauma that they were going through, and that impacted how they raised their children and us. And
but
go
Dr.
ahead,
Kai,
for the butt. Come on in.
but what about my mom had me when she was 17, 18, something like that. Like my mom, I think she could have been a brain surgeon. And my grandmother's generation, I would say, because my grandmother had 8 kids, and my mom is the oldest of those 8 kids. So I even try to consider that from the time my mother's only 8 years older than her youngest sibling. She's always, but my grandmother had all the grandkids. Like I have children that are 25 and 27. I try to stay current on things that is happening, but I think I owe that to them as their mom, because I would hate for them to go to somebody else and get an answer. So if my daughters come to me for something and I don't know, I say, give me a moment, let me ask somebody or whatever. I think seasons change and you always have to evolve. That's why I think in terms of, for me, I made a commitment to my children. When I knew I was broken and I heard myself say some of the words that I had been told in my life to my oldest daughter, I said, oh shit. I heard it come out my mouth. I said, you're going to be so damn hot. And I'm telling you, instantly, the next morning I was on the phone, EAP. I got to change this.
That's real.
You know what I mean? So that's why, like, even now as we evolve, and my mom is more involved in her grandchildren's life, her great grandchildren's life. I'm like, come on now, you had resources. It's different than somebody that would be my grandmother's age in their 80s. My mom can sit and watch Jeopardy and answer every single question that pops up. My mom, all she does, I call her the queen of HBO. She loves watching movies. She knows everything verbatim. Your most important task to me, that as a woman that I could ever be tasked with having, is that of having children. I'm somebody's wife, but that might change. That might change, but I'm always going to be Naya and Maliha's mother. I'm always going to be their mom. I'm always, my kids can be in hell with gasoline drawers on. I'm coming. And my kids tell me that all the time, Mom, when I've been in a million little pieces at times, but I've never felt my children.
Absolutely.
So I'm not willing to make excuses. And even after you tell somebody, if it was your girlfriends, you tell your girlfriends your inner, some stuff you probably wouldn't say out loud.
Bashir?
Yes.
Do you recall going to your grandparents' house, your grandparents watching you when you was a young child?
Yes.
So your mom had to help.
My mom had help, and if my mom and my grandmother was in the same room and we said mom, my mom knew we wasn't talking about her.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying, because I know with me,
I was just about to say something you should say.
Once one of your kids tell you something and you don't pivot, it only takes my daughters to tell me something one time. I'm so afraid of living my life without having my daughters And I don't know if that's the right word to use. It's just so very important to me that I send two good humans out into the world. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
I would do whatever it takes to make them better women.
Your mom came from that era. Your mom's only 10 years. You said your mom's 69?
Yeah, my mom's 69.
So and I'm 59. She's only 10 years older than me. She came from that era where they didn't express love to you. They didn't express, and I don't understand why she's not doing it now. But she'll tell the world about it. How proud she is of you and what you have, all your accomplishments and everything. But
Just
she
about to
will
say the
never
same
tell
thing.
you that. That's
My little girl is ashy. She ain't ready to be healed, Dr. Ty.
Okay. So what I'm going to do actually is we're going to go over an exercise, and it's like a reparenting exercise. So we're going to learn how to reparent our inner child. I don't know if you guys want to get your pens and papers out. The first step is
I already
to
have my notepad.
the first step is to acknowledge the wounds and the unmet needs of your inner child, and reflect on those moments where you were and you felt invalidated or hurt. And that's like our first step, is to understand and to recognize that these things happened. Our second thing is to offer ourselves a little grace, a little self-compassion. So you're going to treat yourself as you would if you were treating the 10-year-old or the 8-year-old. When painful emotions come up today, how can you speak to yourself? How can you speak to that person? You speak to yourself in calm, caring. And you want to be that guardian that your inner child didn't have. Another tip that I want to give you guys is to, like, another part of this is to establish a connection with her. Make sure that you're creating a safe space in your mind where you can meet her, find out how she's feeling, and listen to her. Make sure that she's loved unconditionally. And when I say unconditional love, I mean loving unconditional. We're not judging her for things that happened. We're going to pretend like we're hugging her, that we are providing her that comfort that she needs. We're going to meet her needs. We're going to meet her where she is. Because remember, if, her needs weren't met, then she's going to seek out from other people and other situations. And being a broken inner child, seek out those things, those holes that she's trying to grasp from other people who might not fill those holes appropriately. Each time you have a big progress, you're going to celebrate with her. Each time you want to, you see her and she's made a little bit of progress, hey now. And what I mean by that is, as an adult, when you set a boundary with someone where you would have allowed this person to walk all over you in the past, and you set that boundary and you knew that was meeting that boundary, girl, yes, look at me. And make sure you're showing her empathy, and watch as you're doing this, the transformation takes place. Do you guys have any questions?
I was just gonna say that I wanted to say, in regards to, I can say, with my love life, that I know that, you know how they have your love language. So I recognize that one of my love languages has to do with what I didn't receive as a child. So that was part of my, I guess, like, I recognize it now as like the words of affirmation is like my number one. And that's one thing that I didn't get as a kid. And that's one thing that I look for now as an adult. So it's just something that I recognize, and I work on that with myself, and always looking at positive words of affirmation to affirm myself that I am loved and I'm proud of myself and things like that.
Fantastic. I'm also a big fan of affirmation. So I'm going to also leave you all with 3 words of loving affirmation that you can say to her.
I am worthy of love and healing. I release the pain of the past and embrace the present. I give my inner child care and the attention that she deserves. God bless. Good night.